Hey there, I am Barb Higgins, and this is 1,000 Tiny Steps. In this podcast, I share my stories of love, loss, triumph, and tragedy as I continue to retrace my steps and ponder what led to the death of my daughter Molly. By doing so, I hope to not only help myself, but to bring purpose and possibility to those who listen. If you are ready to laugh, cry, shake your head in disbelief, then tie, buckle, lace up, or slip on your shoes, and join me as we begin our 1,000 Tiny Steps.
Hey everybody, I'm exhausted, physically exhausted, spiritually exhausted, emotionally exhausted in every manner possible. And I'm fine all at the same time. I'm in my office, which is a huge mess because it's full of the remnants of the MollyB extravaganza that took place Thursday, the 27th of March, which was just 2 days ago as I record. Like any Molly-centered event, it's a multitude of feelings and emotions and experiences. What I learn about grief as I continue to live my life without all of my children alive, but specifically Molly, is that in our worst moments, as her mother or her sister or her father or her grandmother or her friends or her dance teacher or whoever it is, when we're hurting the most, what we need is the comfort of the person that existed before Molly who could have given us the comfort. So you have the reality of living a life with everyone alive, and then somebody goes missing. And so it's not just the person who's gone. It's the role they played in the family. So there's an adjustment of behaviors and responsibilities and ownerships. It's all of the memories that are now never going to happen. With a 13-year-old dying, that's a shit ton of memories, right? That's not, oh, my mother was 85 and I'll never have another Christmas with her. I'm not dismissing that. But you had 85 Christmases. There wasn't going to be a lot more anyway. And I'm speaking as having lost 2 fathers, several older relatives, and 2 children. The grief is different. Now, my family lost Molly. So Gracie lost Molly. Kenny lost Molly. I lost Molly. I remember writing the obituary for Molly. I did that. Kenny didn't write it. My mother didn't write it. The funeral home didn't write it. Gracie didn't write it. Do I sound snarky here? I'm not. I'm good at these things. I wrote it. And it ended with, of all of the people who will miss Molly, Gracie will miss Molly the most. So this leads me into my topic for today, which is sibling grief. It's easy for me sometimes to get very swallowed up in my own grief because as a mother, I had the biologically closest relationship with Molly. I grew her from the moment she was conceived, when she was the size of the head of a pin, until the 8 pounds, 13 ounces I pushed out, 8 pounds, 6 ounces I pushed out. She was a part of my physical reality. My blood flowed through her blood. My body grew her. My body then nourished her. My nervous system began responding to her the moment she was conceived. This is one of the most fascinating pieces of the child-mother relationship that I have learned. And I learned it because it played a huge role in my grief. Because when you have a nervous system attachment, your nervous system, your brain, and all the nerve endings that are connected to the baby are permanent. Unlike most other ones, when the baby disappears, those nerve endings alter and change, but they don't diminish. So what I mean by that is if you ride a bike and then you don't ride a bike for 10 years, it might be shaky to get on it, but eventually you learn to ride the bike again. And you learn it more quickly than the first time you learned, because your brain remembers all of the movements and everything that went into riding the bike. However, those nerve endings, the ride the bike nerve endings, don't become intensified and wake you up at night if you haven't ridden your bike in a few days. There's no biological connection to you and your bike. So when I gave birth to Molly, suddenly my body doesn't just respond immediately to her. She's outside of me. And my nerve endings are like, where is she? Where is she? Where is she? So if she cries, milk comes out of my breasts, right? Or I wake up in an instant. When I hear her voice, I feel the letdown. In those early months of being a mother, so much of the relationship and the symbiosis is through the breasts, at least for those who breastfeed. It's a constant external communication. I can sleep through, an earthquake, but Jack whispers my name and I'm wide awake. It's that mother-child connection. Grief is no different. When I was thinking I was never going to make it, my therapist explained to me and reviewed for me the nerve ending piece and that I had to rewire them. I wasn't going to shut them down. I had to find a new way to respond to them and meet them. And in the beginning, it's panic. And you don't want to think about the fact that your baby's never coming back. And there's this horrible feeling that goes with that. So I'm explaining how it was for me, even though I'm going to talk a lot about what I feel and what I witness it's been like for Gracie. And the reason this comes up is Gracie and I had a very, very, very hard few days before the gala, before the MollyB extravaganza. The last time we had this hard a time, it was when she found out I was pregnant with Jack. Another time, I think it was shortly after the brain tumors and how she couldn't catch a break. Her life was just never about her. I went bowling with some friends of mine from high school a couple of weeks ago, and one of my friends, Noni, lost her mother and sister in a car accident that she came out of unscathed. Her mom and sister die, and she and her friend Sarah don't. And that's that. So she goes from a family of 3 girls and 3 boys to 3 boys and 1 girl, and no mom. And she thinks back to how bleak and dark those days were and how so much of her identity was connected to her sister. It was Noni and Jekka. They were the 2 of them. Noni was older. Jekka was wicked tall. So I think people often thought Jekka was older. But I just know that even in my memory, when I think of Noni, I never don't think of Jekka. I also never think of Sarah. There are people connected to her in my memory. So this gets me to thinking about Gracie, because I often reach out to Noni sometimes. And I think about Gracie and how for every moment of her life, once she adapted and adjusted to Molly's existence, they were touching somehow. One of the biggest difficulties Gracie had after she was born was that I couldn't just pick her up and hold her whenever she needed. Her first real meaningful sentence was Molly down, Molly down. And there were times that I put Molly down. I put her down on the kitchen floor. I put her down on the couch. I put her down on the living room rug. And I picked up Gracie, even if sometimes that made Molly cry. Because Gracie had spent almost 2 years of her life being the only baby here. And so I picked her up whenever she cried. I remember nursing Molly in the bed one night to get to sleep, and I rolled over, and Gracie wasn't facing me. And when I rolled her over, tears were streaming out of her eyes, and I hugged her and loved her. And she didn't nurse anymore, and she didn't want to nurse. Sometimes toddler-age children will start nursing again when the new baby comes. She didn't, but she just wanted me to love her and hold her. And I remember feeling utterly helpless. How do I show her that I still love her as much, if not more, than I did before Molly's arrival? It's a hard one for me. I don't always quite know what to do. So once that hurdle was overcome, Molly and Gracie were inseparable. They played together all the time. I had very seldom had play dates because they didn't need play dates. And when we did have play dates, it needed to be somebody that was going to play with both girls because they were a package deal. And sometimes that worked out well and sometimes it didn't. When we all still slept in the family bed, I would wake up and they were intertwined. It wasn't just me they snuggled each other. And then when they had their own rooms, the number of times I walked in to find them both asleep in one bed are too many to count. I wish I had taken more pictures of that. The night before Molly died, Kenny went in at like midnight to get them to finally go to sleep, and they were in the same twin bed watching Friends on the iPad. Molly was obsessed with the show Friends when she died. And Gracie talks about how Molly climbed up and got in her own bed, and they chit-chatted and talked and had the best night ever. Good night, Molly. Good night, Gracie. And then everything fell apart. That was their last conversation. I have to remember that. Gracie's life from that day forward stopped being that constant physical safe connection. She lost her hand-holding, arm-linking, shoulder-touching snuggle buddy. Now, Gracie and I slept on the living room floor together for 2 years. I would wake up in the night and we would be holding hands. I would wake up in the night and she would be almost on top of me. But I wasn't Molly, and I wasn't the mother she needed. Although I chewed a shit ton of glass, metaphorically, to keep my arms around her in those nights, it wasn't what she needed. It was all she had. Her day-to-day existence was never the same because so much of her day-to-day existence was Molly. She was half of a pair. And becoming a solo Gracie was almost an impossibility for her for a long time. She wasn't the one that navigated that kind of stuff. Molly took care of all the thinking. Gracie organized and scheduled, packed the lunches, did all the building of the structure, and Molly took care of every detail, every thought detail, every interpretation. They were such a perfect balance for one another. Gracie's in a new relationship, and her partner, Emily, is like the yin to her yang. I love watching them together. They look like best friends, which is what any relationship should be. And Emily has a dance background, and she has a twin sister. And there are so many similarities. And I had a wonderful conversation with Gracie about this and how we find our partners in life, our partners in crime, people that we're close to, based on familiarity, based on what we need, based on what will make us happy, based on what will give us comfort. So many of my choices in partners initially were very unhealthy. They were based upon childhood sexual abuse and the uncontrollable physical things that happen in our bodies. You don't control when you get hungry. You get hungry because your stomach is empty of food. And a lot of sexual stuff is not supposed to happen when you're 7. And so the triggers and the feelings that are biologically there can rise up at horribly inappropriate times in the adult lives of abused victims. Sexual assault is a lifelong thing to battle. And so many of my relationships were a product of that. I always had the safe person and the secret person. And that was a lifelong, the way I deal with it now is I have nobody. And that seems to be the safest way for me at the moment. We had a wonderful conversation while she was up here. And her being up here almost didn't happen. So from my point, when I'm planning a MollyB Foundation event, I always feel like I have my family support because Molly belonged to our family. And in my never-ending desire to mother Molly, the only way I can mother her is through the foundation and what I do for her. In Gracie's weaker moments, and her sad moments, and her tender moments, she sees every Molly sentence I utter as proof that she isn't good enough, that I must love Molly more, that I pay more attention to dead Molly than I do alive Gracie. And I know that I think if she listens to this, she'll feel bad about that statement, like it somehow makes her look bad, and it doesn't. It doesn't make me look bad either. It makes me feel terrible. And I realize that a lot of my Molly interactions make her feel terrible. And I think if Molly were here, how would they compare themselves to each other in terms of who I love the most? The beauty of those two is they were like one unit. They shared a birthday party. They shared a room. For a long time, they shared a wardrobe. I bought 2 of everything, and they just dressed the same all the time. Once they got bigger, they decided not to do that anymore, and that was fine. But when you look at their life and everything they did, they were 2 parts of a whole. Even though half a pizza is delicious, it's still half a pizza. I remember when I told her I was pregnant with Jack, or even when I wanted to make a baby, she just felt like she was never going to be enough for me. Well, it's not her job to be enough for me. I didn't give birth to Molly because having Gracie as an only child wasn't enough. It's not a reflection on the child at all. It explains why oftentimes firstborn children have resentments to their younger siblings, especially if they're older and had more time without them. It was all about them, and now this other person here who's competing for attention with mom. You must love me the most. You had me first. And mothers go through balancing this. And siblings, oftentimes, the dynamics of siblings, they can fight about this. Mom loves me more than you. I don't believe Gracie and Molly had too many of those fights because they were such a unit. I couldn't love one of them without loving the other. So it took me a lot of explaining and talking to Gracie around the birth of Jack to explain that his birth and conception and decision to have him had nothing to do with her value as my daughter. It was me as a mother and my crazy dreams, but me as a mother. And now that Jack is here and I see the role that he plays in my life and in our lives, he's such a necessary, vital, beautiful part of my family and such an important piece of the story. Gracie's story and Molly's story and Kenny's story and my story. So I'm planning the extravaganza. And I know that we're on tender footing a little bit anyway, because Kenny and I spent 5 weeks in Indonesia, and Gracie was a bit miffed that we waited until she was at Disney to do such a thing. I didn't consciously wait until she couldn't come. The whole trip fell into place, and during that planning time, she accepted a role in the DCP. So that's fine. That was a bad coincidence, and she didn't want to give up the DCP to go to Indonesia. And I don't blame her. She's got her life to live. When we returned and she came home for a bit, and then we went down to visit, I felt like things were better, but still not great. And so we talked about when we'd see each other again. And my memory is that I said, well, please plan to come up for a few days for the extravaganza. And she said, of course. A few days after I got home, I booked a flight for her and had her coming home for 5 days, not thinking that this would be a problem because she's been able to come home before for things. So she responded with, why do I have to come home for so many days? Which I took to mean she didn't want to come home. So I wrote back and said, well, simply because I'm going to need help. I count on you. You're a part of the family. And then afterwards, I would love some help organizing your room because the room was a disaster. We painted it and that sort of thing. I didn't hear anything for a while until about 2 days before she was supposed to come home. And then we have this series of conversations where she's like, I don't think I can get the days off. Maybe I just come up the day of the gala and go home the next day. My knee-jerk reaction was, of course, nobody wants this but me. Nobody was buying tickets to the event. Nobody was sponsoring the event. I was a mess. I was in such a bad place. Really, I just knee-jerk reaction and took it out on Gracie and got really mad at her. I said, fine, just don't even come. I don't care. So what this did to her is just, one, it devastated her and hurt her feelings because she knew that I assumed she didn't care, and she did care. And two, it made her feel that Molly and the gala was more important than her. And so began a pretty ugly fight. And so when she uttered all in text, by the way, when she made the statement that I spend more time on dead Molly than I do on alive Gracie, that gutted me a bit. That was like a brick in the face moment. And I didn't quite know what to do with it. Because as a mother, I feel I spend equal time on them. And if anything, more time on Gracie because she's here and I can mother her. But that isn't how it feels for Gracie because she isn't getting any Molly either. I'm looking to still mother 2 children. Gracie is looking to still receive the attention and love that she used to get from me and Molly. And now there's only me. So both of us have this expectation of each other that is impossible because Molly's not here. She made a statement, I'm just, I'm the invisible griever, the forgotten griever, the sibling. And she's right, especially with children, there can't be these independent grief groups online for children. They have to be moderated by an adult. And who's the safe adult? And then it's not really about the child then because it's being moderated by an adult. In Gracie's life since Molly, from my perspective, I've put her first every time. That doesn't mean that's how she feels from her perspective at all. That absolutely does not mix for her. I'm not going to make a list of everything I do to prove that I love her because now I'm making a list that she has to somehow be thankful for. A lot of mothering is invisible, but it really gutted me. And it just got me thinking about sibling grief. Good old AI tells us that sibling grief, the pain of losing a brother or a sister, is a profound and often overlooked experience, leading to unique challenges and lasting impacts on the surviving sibling's identity and well-being. This is so utterly true. I mean, it's just common sense and logic. Every fiber of Gracie's day-to-day, minute-by-minute life blew up when Molly died. I spent hours and hours a day away from her. I mean, Gracie did too, but when they weren't in school, they were together from the moment they got home until the moment they got up the next day and went back to school. And they were counting the days that they would have 2 years together at high school, like just so excited for this. When Gracie says, you don't love me as much as her, you don't spend as much time on me as her, I can't defend it in a meaningful way. If I want to defend myself, I need to look in the mirror and defend myself. I can't do that in front of Gracie. I have to somehow show her that I love her as much as did Molly. And that's hard to do because I'm not going to stop posting about Molly. I need to mother both my daughters. I need to mother them both. I don't have Molly here to respond to a text message and help with an outfit and listen to a story and send money via Venmo and celebrate a 21st birthday. I don't have that with her. I don't have it. I'm in a conundrum. Here's what Siri has to tell us about understanding sibling grief. Unique relationship. Sibling relationships are often characterized by a unique blend of closeness, competition, and shared history, making the loss of a sibling particularly difficult. There was a lot of competition between Gracie and Molly that was easily worked out. Gracie is a kid magnet. They go immediately to Gracie, and Molly would always feel like they liked her better. What Molly didn't realize is that after a while, any child with that high-level, interpretive, inquisitive nature would seek out Molly because she could have those conversations with them. That was the one place they were competitive. It wasn't at dance. It wasn't in school. They understood their differences. It wasn't in theater. They each knew what roles they liked, and that didn't seem to bother them. Grieving siblings are sometimes overlooked. They are the forgotten mourners, leading to feelings of isolation and a lack of validation for their loss. I got Gracie a therapist first. I let her stay home from school anytime she wanted. I upgraded her phone so that she could scroll on it forever. I didn't tell her not to. She spent hours on social media. She had like a 5-year streak on Snapchat. She probably still has them with friends. I put no boundaries on her. If she wanted to do something, I let her do it. I'm not quite sure that would have felt like me loving her more than Molly at the time. I think I was just providing her a beach ball in a deep ocean to hold on to. But I did those things, and that's how I let myself know that I was thinking about her. I also was thinking a lot about me, and I made a ton of decisions that were not in her best interest in my grief. The next thing about sibling grief is impact on identity. Losing a sibling can lead to questioning one's identity and place in the family, especially if the sibling was a role model or a source of comfort. Oh my God, Gracie and Molly were oxygen to one another. So Gracie's identity, I think she still struggles sometimes. I know that when I decided to have Jack, she immediately took it as a reflection of her. And that was difficult. Long-term effects. Grief can manifest in various ways, including emotional, physical, and behavioral changes. It can have long-term impacts on mental and physical health. So I would have to say, compared to some families I know and what many, many children who have lost siblings have gone through, Gracie has done very well. She graduated high school. She got accepted into a community college. She's in the entertainment program at Disney. She's not a drug addict. She's not an alcoholic. She hasn't slept with 100 people. Like, she's been incredibly successful. In no part because of me, quite honestly, in spite of me, I think sometimes. But is she the Gracie she would have been if Molly were still here? No, obviously not. And I think in some ways she's maybe stronger than she might have been otherwise because she's had to do so much on her own. But that isn't aren't we lucky that Molly died so Gracie could be strong? I think she would prefer to be the version of strong that exists with Molly here. But she is profoundly and everyday affected by the loss of Molly. Guilt and regret. If the children was younger, surviving siblings may experience guilt or regret over not being able to protect them. We all have profound regrets over the things we didn't share about Molly's physical well-being. Molly insisted that Gracie keep a lot of her symptoms secret, and Gracie did, knowing now that if there was more information to give doctors and nurses, not that it would have made any difference, but it might have. Everybody feels that way. Her dance teachers, her school teachers, everybody in Molly's life has a story of an event that made them ponder what was going on with Molly. So they tell the siblings, acknowledge your grief and seek support from friends, honor the memory by sharing stories, all of the things that we do, seek support, practice self-care, blah, blah, blah. We all do these things. And Gracie is exemplary at doing these things. Her therapy was primarily with a CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, very practical, objective, concrete things to do when you're feeling a certain way. And those were super helpful for her, having a process to follow. And she clung to those things and utilized them well. Grief is a lifelong process, though, and it morphs and changes. So I was a bit taken aback that Gracie could still feel that I paid more attention to Molly than her. And her comment here was that every day she goes online and I'm posting about Molly, 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 Molly. And in my mind, I'm promoting an event that needs ticket buyers in order to be successful. Like how does it work if we don't sell tickets? So all of my promotion of the event was because of the extravaganza. So in my anger, I said, fine, I won't do another extravaganza. Forget it. To which she would reply, no, I like the extravaganza. To which I reply, well, then what the heck do you expect me to do? I can't not promote it. Which makes her realize that using that as an example of me loving Molly more probably isn't fair. But that doesn't mean it doesn't make her feel that I love Molly more or that I spend more time thinking about her. Today, the day I record this, Kenny posted a memory of Gracie's first tap solo. The memory that came up on my Facebook page, even though I posted that video, that was my post, was a video of a music video that Molly and Gracie made together, primarily Molly. She spent hours on it on a rainy day just like today. And so I posted it. And my first concern is that Gracie is going to think that she can't even have Facebook to herself for a day, that there's a memory about her and then I have to go post a Molly memory. Now, Gracie was in the video as well, but it's a Molly memory. I get a bit angry and resentful. Like I have to moderate my own grief so I don't hurt other people's feelings. I had a pretty significant situation with the extravaganza around moderating my grief to meet the needs of somebody else's grief. And it was frustrating and difficult. And such is life, right? Frustrating and difficult. What do I do? Well, the short answer is nothing. I keep living. Be mindful of the fact that this experience for Gracie is incredibly different than it is for me. That she will always view herself as my child. And when it comes to Molly, she's immediately a young 15 again, and Molly's 13. She's immediately a child. When I view Gracie and Molly together, I don't view them as adults because I never got to experience that. Every memory I have of them comes up. Which brings the next great dichotomy of grief is that you want to remember. I don't want to forget. I love the memories. And they just hurt so much because they stopped. With the pull of a plug, they stopped on May 7th, 2016. And there are no more Gracie Molly memories. So do I put them all away? There's a local family whose daughter died right around the time Molly. I've talked about them before, and they were very private in their grief. They have things that they do to honor her. And her younger brother is now going off to college, and he's so successful in theater. I'm so proud of him. I don't know what his grief has been like losing his big sister. It can't have been good. That's not how it works. They were the same age, these two. So then I looked more specifically. I went to a page called healgrief.org, grieving the death of a sibling. So will I send this to Gracie? I might. I might send this website to her because that would be something that would be helpful to her. That would be something that would let her know I'm thinking about her. She might greet it with resentment. I don't know. So there's all sorts of things on this page when grief bubbles up, self-care, what to do, how to feel, what it is, what it isn't. The death of a brother or sister is a significant loss, yet many of us will face the loss of a sibling more than once. As you age, your siblings die. You don't all die at the same time. I haven't lost any siblings yet. I don't know what that will be like. Let me take that back. I lost my older brother, Jeffrey, but he wasn't somebody I grew up with. He was a sibling I didn't even know I had as a sibling until I was 13, and I didn't have any real meaningful time with him until I was well into my 30s and 40s. So I have lost a sibling. It is not a loss for me like it is for Martha and PJ, or even Eleanor. Oftentimes, when children die, the focus is the parents, especially the mother. Now, because Molly and Gracie were so visible in the community, our house was full of kids all summer long in 2016. I didn't have one parent say no when I asked if their child could skip school and hang out with Gracie for the day. I didn't have one parent say no when I had yard parties and swimming pool parties. Ever. They all just took care of us. They all came. But I had tremendous support as well. Kenny had tremendous support. But here's why sibling loss is a bit different, because we don't think about it as much. A brother or a sister is someone who shares a unique co-history with you. Gracie and Molly have a co-history that I will never be a part of. They're collectively my children. They were each other's person. This person was integral to your formative past. For better or for worse, your brother or sister shared common memories, critical childhood experiences, and family history. When death takes your brother or sister, it also takes away one of your connections to the past. The brother or sister who knew you in a particular way, unlike those who know you as an adult, or who knew you outside your home. Also, a constant is gone. A sibling holds a symbolic place in your life, especially if they have an impact on your day-to-day activities. In some cases, the death of a sibling may make you an only child. So granted, Gracie has 3 half-siblings. But Katie, Davy, and Kenny are not a regular part of her life. They never were, and they weren't then, and they aren't now. Gracie became an only child. In the day-to-day reality of her life, her nuclear family was Molly, Gracie, Kenny, Barb. And now it was just 2 ridiculously bereaved parents and her. A house that was deafeningly silent. This is a piece that's incredibly, I'm going to read this paragraph here. Since siblings often feel their grief isn't fully acknowledged and their parents are focused on overcoming their loss, they can feel abandoned by their parents. When they need them most, their parents are disabled by their own grief. I've used this example and talked about this again and again. Gracie and I talked about it on the porch 24 hours ago. Surviving siblings must get the support they need from others in their family or community. Gracie did not have a sibling that could support her. There was too much animosity tied up in Kenny's children's relationship with our family that any support that came from any of them was contingent upon my behavior and how they felt about me, which was incredibly unfair to Gracie. Gracie's feelings of resentment and abandonment rise up when her safety is challenged. And I cannot, for 100,000 years, ever judge that or diminish that or be angry at her about that. That is a reality for her. I imagine 20 years from now, there could be a situation that occurs where Gracie will feel the same way. I am always going to be her mother. She's always going to be my daughter. She will always be Molly's sister. Sibling grief can be complicated in ways that other grief isn't. There's ambivalence, one of my favorite words. Ambivalence. Am I? Aren't I? Should I? Shouldn't I? I am. I'm not. I'm happy. I'm sad. Oftentimes there's guilt. I should have said something more. I feel guilty that I told my mother she must not love me as much as Molly. Guilt, guilt, guilt. In every manner, with her friends. Gracie was very, very close in the months after Molly's death to Molly's friends. And I know that was her trying to hold on to a piece of Molly. And that was hard on them. It was difficult in their grief. They had tough times. There's all that regret and loss about things that aren't happening. There were certain times, going back to school the year after Molly died was hard because life just went back to normal. And all of her friends had to stop coming over all the time. And life got back. And everything went on without her. I had that experience the day after we pulled the plug when it was Mother's Day and everybody was having brunch with their kids and Molly was dead. And for me, it was an immediate notice. Gracie basked in denial for an entire summer. Another really hard year for Gracie was her junior year when she went off to school and there's all of Molly's friends as freshmen and no Molly. They were supposed to be with her. She was supposed to be at that school. And Gracie would sit at the cafeteria and scan the room and see them all. And there would be no Molly. Another factor that complicates sibling grief is the need to support your parents in their suffering. Gracie knows I need her. I tell her I need her. I needed her to come home to help me with this. She couldn't get the time off from work. That's a big part of it. But she also didn't want to get the time off from work. She did not want to jeopardize her standing at Disney. She didn't want to go through the hassle. She didn't want to call in sick. She didn't want to do anything that would give her a demerit or a mark or a judgment at work. That was more important to her than coming home and helping me. That's my thing to deal with, not Gracie's. She has the right to not want to come home and do these things. It was hard for me. It was hard for me. And a lot of my realizations come from this conversation. Needing me to understand her takes energy and emotional reserves away from her. I think sometimes Gracie questions if she has the right to mourn like I do. She does, of course. And then when she gets angry that I can't see that she needs me as much as I need Molly. Her need for me to be there for her is as big as my need to mother Molly is. And boy, is that a conflicting feeling sometimes. This site that I'm on, healgrief.org, gives all sorts of suggestions for bereaved siblings. So much of what they need depends on how old they are. I think the biggest thing is everyone's grief is unique and it can take as long as they want. One of the MollyB Award winners at last night's extravaganza was Cindy Flanagan. And anyone that knows Cindy Flanagan knows that she doesn't always come off as warm and squishy. She's strong. She's insistent. She can be opinionated, but she's not bigoted or cruel. She doesn't take any crap. She's also as soft as the day is long, and the word Molly brings tears to her eyes still. She is the one that explained to me that grief is a highway, and we all travel the highway at different speeds. So when I'm at exit 1, an acquaintance of Molly is already at exit 30 because they hardly knew Molly, and so their grief process went quickly. When I'm at exit 2, my best friend might be at exit 6. We're all at different places, and I've tried very hard to let Gracie know that when her friends start dropping by the wayside and don't seem to remember Molly so much, it's just because they didn't hold hands with Molly in every picture. They didn't snuggle with Molly every night. They didn't talk for hours and share life dreams with one another. They didn't cohabitate as a family unit in a house with their friends, right? It's a lifelong journey. And I know that in the future, I'm going to have to remind myself to think about Gracie. One of the things we've all started doing, like when we redid the kitchen, if Molly were alive, we would have redone this kitchen already. Or we would have sold the house maybe and moved. Like things would have been different. So what would Molly like in a new kitchen? Sometimes we ask ourselves these questions. What would Molly want? We have some dance costumes to still put away. We have this foundation to build. And we have to ask ourselves, what would we be doing right now if Molly were alive? You know, if Molly were alive, she and Gracie, well, Molly would be graduating college this spring, right? So she would be wherever she would be. Gracie might still be at Disney right now, but whatever their trajectory was, they would be connected and together. They aren't. Gracie has to do this all by herself. What I love about Gracie is she has found a partner that in a healthy way fulfills a need for her. Same interests, same style of French braiding hair, similar histories, wonderful understanding and empathy for one another. You know, such good qualities in friends. When I look at Gracie's best friends growing up, they're all just like Emily. They're the same. This website includes a mourner's bill of rights. And it's actually really wonderful, and it works for everybody, not just siblings. But I'm going to read it now, each of the Bill of Rights, through Gracie's lens. What do I have to do to honor Gracie in these steps? So the first is you have the right to experience your own unique grief. So when Gracie gets mad at me and thinks that I'm paying too much attention to Molly, that's a part of her grief. It's not mine to change. It's mine to support and process through and see if she needs help with. You have the right to talk about your grief. As her mother, I have to give her this right more than I have to expect it of her from my grief. I can find adults to talk about my grief with. You have the right to feel a multitude of emotions. Anger, sadness, guilt, grief, frustration. You have the right to be tolerant of your physical and emotional limits. She brought this up with me. I'm setting a boundary, Mom. Right now, it's not all about Molly for me. I need to make sure that I'm meeting my needs here in Florida. And she's right. And I have to set my boundaries. And in my situation with this other griever who very much wanted to tell me what to do around the extravaganza, I had to set down boundaries. I'll honor you to the best of my ability, but you can't tell me what to do. That couldn't have been easy for this person, but I'm not going to change my grief story because somebody doesn't like it. I just won't share my grief story with that person. You have the right to experience grief bursts. That's when it just comes together all at once. You have the right to make use of ritual. One of my favorite podcasts is Little Rituals. Rituals are habits or little procedures or things we do every day that make us feel better. I'm not super ritualistic because I'm a go with the flow kind of person sometimes, but I do have rituals around healing. And I talk to Molly all the time. You know, I touch the dance costumes every time I walk by, little things like this. Funerals are one ritual. For me, having a foundation is full of rituals, things I can do that keep me busy and purposeful, but honor Molly. Gracie has to come up with her own. And if they need to be invisible, then they can be invisible. They're not my business. They're hers. You have the right to embrace your spirituality. Now, for the purposes of this, you can be an atheist and have behaviors that are spiritual. They just aren't connected to a deity. Maybe they're universal. Maybe they're scientifically unexplainable, whatever you want to describe it as. But that emotional, mental, spiritual, universal piece of grief is everybody's right and privilege to have as a griever and to be done the way they need to do. You have the right to search for meaning. This is me all the time. Constant struggle. Doesn't mean you get the answer to why, but sometimes in asking a question, you get answers to other things. This is where I can encourage Gracie. And this is where I can say to her, part of why I do what I do is my quest for meaning and understanding. Let me acknowledge that I'm not trying to hurt your feelings by doing it. You have the right to treasure your memories. Sometimes this is holding on to physical things. Sometimes this is a memory in your mind. Sometimes this is a photo album. You have the right to move toward your grief and heal. Reconciling your grief does not happen quickly. And let me be clear. I will never completely reconcile Molly's death. As a mother, that's an impossibility. It will be reconciled when I join her in the afterlife and all of my questions are answered, which will happen then. That's my belief. When people admonish me for still expressing sadness, which is not too many people, how nice for you that you think you have the right to tell me how to grieve my dead kid. And that's hard. That's hard for me. But I think we all, at the base of everything, want to be helpful to one another and ease each other's suffering. Ease his pain. Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. Our pain, ease our pain, right? We have the right to move toward our grief and heal. And heal. Dead kid healing is an open wound that's manageable. That's what it is. It doesn't need stitches every day. It's not my intestines falling out of my stomach every day. Sometimes it's just a little scar. Sometimes it's just an amputated foot, right? Healing is different day to day. I do look at physical examples of child loss as losing a limb, and you will never get the limb back, so you have to learn to live without it. So I grieve the loss of Molly all the time because every action in my life is different because she isn't in it. And if it's that way for me, then it's profoundly that way for Gracie. So here we are, coming up on completing year number 9. It will be 9 years. Tuesday, April 1st will be the 9th birthday. Will have been the 9th birthday without Molly. It will be different. I will still go up there with all those balloons. It's what I do. I'll sing to her. I won't eat a cupcake because I think I'm starting 75 hard that day. Oh, I'll have to eat a cupcake the day before. Anyway, I don't know. Here we are, about to wrap up year number 9. And I'm giving this podcast with smelly armpits and greasy hair and a messy house on a cloudy day in March where I just want her back. That's what I want. I want her back. And while Gracie might have a hard time hearing this, I want that more than I want anything else on one level. I know that I can never have her back. And so if I were given a choice with getting Molly back or losing Gracie, I would keep Gracie because Molly's not here. And having her back doesn't mean I'm going to lose somebody I have. People say that about Jack sometimes. If you could have Molly back tomorrow, would you give up Jack? Well, Jack's here now. That's a question that makes no sense. If I could go back in time, I think all of us would go back in time. And maybe Jack would still be here. Maybe the circumstances of Jack's arrival aren't necessarily contingent upon dead Molly. I don't know. Marching towards Amsterdam memories now. And then to Death Week in May. The great news is the next several episodes will be guest episodes. And I do that a bit on purpose because it gives me a break from all this self-introspection. The not quite coincidental reality of the next few episodes is all of my guests will be mothers that have an element of grief in their motherhood, whether it's child loss, whether it's a child with a disability, whether it's a child that you had to give up custody for because of your drug use, whatever it is, it's grief in mothering and how to make the best decisions as a mother. I'm looking forward to these interviews. I'm looking forward to sharing the stories of others through this vehicle because I think it's incredibly important. So be good to yourself. A lot of this Griever's Bill of Rights are just ways we should care for ourselves anyway. Take care of yourself. Breathe your oxygen. Be good to someone else. Don't hog the oxygen. When you've had a deep breath, put it on somebody else's face and share your deep oxygen with them. And as always, have a good day, everybody.
Hey, thanks for listening and supporting the podcast. Feel free to leave a review and share my stories with your friends. Please reach out with your own stories, as I love connecting with my listeners. If you would like to get to know Molly, head over to mollybfoundation.org to see what she is all about. If you want to see what I'm up to next, you can find me on Instagram at barb_444, on Facebook as Barb Higgins, and at my website, 1000tinysteps.com. And while you're there, sign up for my newsletter, a weekly way to find out what's up in the life of Barb Higgins.